Climate Work Maine for its third Fall Business Connector series. My name is Jeff Marks. I'm Climate Works Executive Director. We are businesses of all sizes and types that provide services and network to support and promote Maine companies with anything that they're doing, products, services, projects related to climate solutions. And we support and assist companies that want to do more on climate change. This Business Connector series is one of our action items to come out of our first annual summit that we held earlier this year. We are having a second summit to build on the success of that event. That will be in May of 2024, and you'll receive some more information on that shortly. We held our first Business Connector webinar on sustainability in planning in September, and our second on financial incentives for climate projects in October. If you're on this webinar and you missed one or both of those, we do have recordings and we do have some of the slides from those presentations. So feel free to reach out and we'll share those with you. These sessions have been pretty popular so far, so we're going to continue the series in 2024, starting in January, where we'll hear from senior officials from the U.S. Department of Energy that are working on various federal programs that are available to your businesses, to your homes, to your facilities, on how to access key energy efficiency, renewable energy, sustainable transportation, and other assistance and investment through the DOE. So there'll be plenty of time during that session to talk with high-level experts on top energy issues. These events that we do are supported by our members, including, I'll just name a few of them here, our climate work heroes like Bangor Savings Bank, CMP, Hannaford, Unum Insurance, and some of our climate work leaders like Benchmark Real Estate, BNRG, Dirigo Solar, Chinbro, Lee Auto Malls, and Nautilus Solar. So let's get right into our panel today. This session is about storytelling, more specifically about what the best way to promote companies' climate-friendly products, their projects and services, and how businesses can share their stories of sustainability and climate action plans with an eye to, selling more things or selling more services to more clients and their customers. This is going to be a pretty high-level discussion and mostly applies to all types of companies, all sizes, geographic locations within the state. And we want this to be more of a discussion than just a panel presentation. So with the exception of a few slides that we'll have, we urge you to ask questions, and there should be a Q&A box at the bottom of your Zoom screen so that you can put your questions in there, either starting immediately or at the end of each of the opening statements. I'm going to introduce our group of experts briefly and then get out of the way completely until the end, letting each of them provide more details about who they are, who they represent, along with some advice and guidance to get the conversation started. So we're going to start today with Carrie Weston from Sutherland Weston. We'll move on to Chris Rudolph from Waterfront Concerts. We'll then turn it over to Alex White from Crown Jewel. And Tom Ruff will close us out from Orange Bike Brewing, and they have a lot of exciting things happening over there this month. So let's get started. Carrie?
Hey, thanks, Jeff, for having me. Yeah, I appreciate you having me. My name's Carrie Weston. I am president of a company called Sutherland Weston, and we're in Bangor. We're a marketing and PR firm. And my role here, I think, is just to get out of the way, right? I played freshman basketball, and I used to start every game only so my 4 minutes could get in and I could get on the bench and the real guys could play. So I feel like that's how I'm doing here. So we work with a lot of businesses that have a story to tell. We work with businesses that are mission-based, whether it's nonprofit or not. There seems to be a personal drive and a mission. And so when we talk with companies that are looking to storytell as part of their business and marketing philosophy, I have three kind of tips, I guess, or themes that I usually bring to the table. The first one is whatever you do, rooted in authenticity. It's amazing how many people we meet that practice things, do things, and convey things in their business life that don't reflect who they are as a person. And quite frankly, they wouldn't tolerate or put up with if they were a consumer working with a business as well, be it practices or the way they talk. And so the more that you can align who you are as a person to who you are as a business person and be more authentic, the more genuine and really effective your messaging is going to be, no matter what that story is. Second thing is the relatability of what you are believing in, what you're doing, and why you're doing it to the product or service you offer and the tribe or audience that you're trying to connect to. The more that you can relate all of those three things together, the more effective it's going to be. When there's a disconnect there, when we simply just tell people that we're doing it because you're supposed to do it, or we don't tie it to an emotional benefit that someone believes in, we have a distance between your message and your product and your audience. And so the more you can bring all those together, the better and more effective your messaging will be. And then the last thing I share is don't overthink this. Don't overlook the everyday. Don't overlook the candid opportunities to show what you do and how you do it. Like Tom, when Tom's brewing, there's some really cool equipment in there. And there's some really cool processes that he goes through, but he sees it every day. So it's like routine. And he may at some point think, well, everyone knows this. And the fact is not everyone knows this. Like not everyone knows what I do and what I use and what it looks like and what it sounds like. And so bringing that authentic and relatable component, being yourself, and then finding opportunities in the everyday work that you do to kind of bring that to light is really the three components that I would share with any business looking to bring their story into their marketing and communications efforts.
What in the dictionary found that the number one searched word this year was authentic. So it makes sense that you start with that, and that's number one on your list.
Well, I got my authentic quota in today, so fantastic.
We'll turn it over to Chris from Waterfront Concerts.
I am Chris Udall from Waterfront Concerts. Thanks for having me. I always have to follow Carey. It's like clockwork, so he steals all of my thunder. With Carey, you get really an organized punch point and punch list kind of approach. We are very much a fly by the seat of our pants organization. So while I agree with the authentics and really owning what you do, I think the really where we've come from the beginning of what we've done is just start with the small things that are easy to accomplish and work your way through. You know, everybody wants to try to do as much to be as environmentally focused as possible. And some of the things that you look at, solar and some of the other things, there's a high cost to those. So we were really conscious when we had zero money, even less than we do now out of the gate, to, make sure we were doing the small things, the recycling program. We have a team that comes in every single show and picks up all the returnables and make sure those get to the right places. We've been really good about our zero sort and our composting over the years. We've had solar on our production trailers for years and years, since 2014. When Live Nation decided to go out and start the Green Nation initiative, they used us as kind of a jump off for advising. And I actually sat on that original board because we were trying to do so many things to be ahead of the curve. And it was a lot of little things. And, with the reasoning for doing it, it was just because in Maine, you're expected to live up to a standard. You have to be more environmentally friendly. You have to be more environmentally focused because that's what the people around you, your community, expect. So for us, it really was starting small and then trying to implement things. I would say that, one thing that we've kind of learned is you can't be afraid to fail. Some of the initiatives that we've put into place have been terrible disasters. And some of them were because of our own doing, and some were just, COVID and other things where we put a huge investment into ideas that we thought were going to be the future that ended up being collectibles that we gave away to sponsors and folks as they came through the venue. So I think the ability to pivot and understand that everything is always changing. So don't put too much pressure on yourself to do the thing that is popular at the moment, because as soon as you invest all of your money and time into that, it could be obsolete. So focus on the things that are attainable, the things that are easily navigated, and the things that make sense to what you're trying to do in the moment.
Great. Thank you, Chris. Let's move on to Alex out on the island.
Hi there, Jeff. Thanks so much for having me. I'm Alex White. I own Crown Jewel on Great Diamond Island, which is in Casco Bay. If you haven't visited us before, we're a seasonal restaurant. We open in May, close in September, and we just celebrated our 6th season. So I am excited to share a little bit about our unique composting program, how and why we got started, how we've been promoting our initiative, and how we've been sharing our plans and our story. I'd like to start by talking a little bit about food waste, which is a critical issue when it comes to climate change, but also an obvious ever-present issue for restaurants. If we step back and look at food waste on a macro perspective, approximately 1/3 of the food produced worldwide never makes it to the table and ends up as waste, occupying about 25% of our landfills. Food waste also wastes land, it wastes water, it wastes labor and energy, and also generates potent greenhouse gases, which, as we know, contribute to global warming. When we refocus and consider food waste in restaurants, about 1/2 a pound of food is wasted per meal, and 85% of food that's not used ends up being thrown out. While there are several things that restaurants can do to reduce food waste, like donating food, ensuring that your food is stored properly, changing your menu, composting might have one of the most significant impacts when it comes to climate change. Owning a restaurant on an island poses unique challenges. Really, owning anything on an island is challenging, and I highly suggest never romanticizing the idea of owning an island restaurant. You will be all the more sane for it. I can tell you that firsthand. Crown Jewel is located on the Diamond Cove side of Great Diamond Island, and the soils there are unique in that they can't support septic. So what does that mean? It means that our wastewater output is significantly limited. And in very simple terms, in order to have a restaurant in Diamond Cove on Great Diamond Island, we needed to use disposable serviceware. Before opening the restaurant, I pledged to the city of Portland that we would purchase as many compostable products as possible and try to achieve 95% compostability. So in theory, this sounded great. It felt like we were doing as much as was within our power to employ sustainable practices, except that our waste, which was largely compostable, was going directly into the landfill because we couldn't find a third-party vendor to transport our compost from the island to the mainland. So here we were thinking that we were, helping the environment when really we were making an investment that was just contributing to this larger issue of climate change. We were left with only one solution, and I underscore one. We needed to set up a composting site on the island and compost ourselves. I'm going to bypass what it took over a 7-year process to get this site up and running on the island. But today we have an 1,100-pound custom commercial shredder that grinds our compostable serviceware and our food waste into a pulp, and a very lovely, smart island teenager who's a senior at Waynflete. He's our chief compost officer, who transports our waste via our electric golf cart to our composting site, where we have 9 255-gallon geo-bins set up in which we compost our waste. This was our first go at it. We knew that there were going to be some kinks to work out. But what's next, right? We've made this large financial investment in getting this program up and running, and this can't be the end. So in 2024, a local landscape architect will be purchasing all of our compost from this past season to use on the island on a large-scale project. Moving forward, we hope to potentially bag and sell our compost through our general store. We feel like this really closes a sustainable loop for our diners. Their waste has now become something productive and something that they can take back home with them. These bags also become really powerful marketing tools. They're tangible reminders of our program and something that folks can share with others. We're exploring opportunities to barter with farms that we already purchase from, exchanging compost for produce. We hope to someday be certified by the Green Restaurant Association, and perhaps a bit more lofty, receive a Michelin Green Star. We continue to tell our story through social media, through local and national press and channels like Climate Work Maine. Our most meaningful engagement, however, is with our guests. Our staff feel really passionate about the work that we're doing, and we definitely attract a certain type of person to our restaurant. And so they're able to talk about it with ease. And at the end of the day, we want our guests to feel good about coming in and eating at the restaurant and like they're doing good just by coming in to eat at the restaurant. I know that we're not a model for everyone. I'm certain there are plenty of people out there that think that we are absolutely certifiable, just to own a restaurant in general. But I'm hoping that what we're doing can model better and more sustainable practices for folks that have remote workplaces and limited resources like ours.
Great, thank you, Alex. I'm looking forward to coming out and trying it when you're open. Let's have Tom finish us out. And looks like you are in the brewery now, Tom. Let us know what you're doing.
Yeah, hi everyone. Thanks for having me, and thanks for having me, Jeff. And yeah, for me, it's a little surreal because Jeff and Alan, who are launched Climate Work Maine a while ago, I've kind of been following this journey. So to see this coming full circle and now to be a guest speaking 2.5 years later, it's pretty neat. So I applaud you and the work that you're doing first and foremost, Jeff, as well as the rest of the folks at Climate Work Maine. So thanks for having me. My name's Tom Rupp. I'm the founder of Orange Bike Brewing Company, and we are a dedicated gluten-free brewery in Portland, Maine. We're located at 31 Diamond Street, right next to Coffee by Design and Rising Tide. We officially we've been working on this project close to 3 years, but we had our official grand opening last weekend. So this last weekend was our second weekend in operation. But yeah, backing up a little, I'm from Indiana. I started a healthcare company shortly after college. I was in Chicago, moved to LA, started a healthcare firm at age 25 and ran the company for close to 34 years. I was splitting my time New York and Los Angeles, and I had a good run. However, the last 7-8 years, I was kind of longing for a new life, and within the healthcare space, I was dealing more with corporate America and the big healthcare companies, the Johnson & Johnson's, Pfizer's, Abbott Laboratories of the world. And it was a good run, but as I got older, I started to rethink what my priorities were and what was important and meaningful to me. Thankfully, in New York City, I met my wife at age 50. We were fortunate as older parents to have a little girl come into the world. The best thing to ever happen to me, our little daughter, Lula. And after splitting my time in New York and LA, having my healthcare company, not really happy and fulfilled. Our daughter was born. We decided to move to Maine. We had started coming to Maine part-time just over 6 years ago before Lula was born. But I spent one summer in Maine. My father was a college professor at Indiana University, but he taught at the University of Maine, Orono, for one summer. My mom loaded up our station wagon and brought us 3 boys, and we explored the great state, the beautiful state of Maine, for one summer. And that summer made an impression on me. For the rest of my life and adult life, I had this vision of living in Maine, but had never actually come back to visit as an adult. And so roughly, 7 years ago, when I first came back after 40 plus years, as soon as I came back into Maine, it just felt like home and felt right. So our daughter was born. We decided to move to Maine full time. And about that time, I started having health issues. I was getting really sick. I had stomach issues, arthritis, inflammation. My eyelids were swollen shut. My throat was swelling up. They thought I had Lyme disease, autoimmune disease. They weren't sure what was going on, but my nutritionist friend in Los Angeles was the one immediately. She's like, Tom, you dummy, it's the gluten. And once I was able to be trained on cross-contamination, gluten, inflammation, and removed it from my diet, everything went away. And within 6 months, I was symptom-free and have been ever since. But I used to be a big craft beer lover. And after having a hard time finding good gluten-free beer, especially on the East Coast, I was able to find some on the West Coast. And that's when the light bulb went off that someone out there was making a really good, dedicated gluten-free beer. So fast forward, I sold my medical company, decided to go all in on this gluten-free brewery. Had the good fortune of meeting with Sean Sullivan from the Maine Brewers Guild, getting connected with Alan Pugsley, who, for those of you that aren't familiar, is in my opinion, one of the best brewers in the world. He was recruited to Maine in 1986 by David Geary to start Geary's and then help start Gritty's. And then Fred Forsley recruited him over to Shipyard, which he was the co-founder at Shipyard for several years. And then he went on to consult on opening breweries, and he agreed to help me to launch Orange Bike Brewing. And we're his 100th brewery project. So we're very fortunate to have him. But also, with the timing was interesting because the world, when we moved up here, our daughter was born, we're new to Maine, COVID hits. We have, to me, what seemed like the world was imploding. George Floyd was murdered. Politics were all over the place, and the world just became a scary place. And for this project, for me, there was one woman that actually made a stand during all of this, Brianne Ellen. She was the head brewer at Notch Brewing at the time in Massachusetts. And she called out kind of the darker side of the craft beer industry and some of the cultural things that are not, some of the bad things that are never discussed, with sexism, racism, discrimination, misogyny. And this all came public. The Me Too movement within craft beer started. And this was 6 days after I had the idea to start this company. So for 6 days, I was just on cloud nine, so excited to finally have something new to do, a new business, entrepreneurial venture. And then this went down. And that really forced me to think about this business and how we were building the business and who we were and what we stood for. And it was at that point we made a decision that it was going to be a purpose and mission driven company, and we would do our best to create a more just and equitable business model, not just within the craft beer industry, but within business as a whole. So for us, fortunately, as this slide shares, these are some of the aspects of our business. We can't do anything without a great product and a great beer. So thankfully we have that with Alan Pugsley. Inclusive hospitality, sustainability. We just publicly announced at our grand opening, even though we've been members now for a while, but we just publicly announced that we're 1% for the planet members. And we're building out a pretty robust mentoring program. We're hopefully 6 months away from becoming B Corp certified. We've been working on this for close to 3 years now. And when we skip to the next slide, if you wouldn't mind, Jen, just fast forwarding to the next one, we can do a little deeper dive. But this is an example of our mission and practice. I'll start at the end. The University of New Hampshire, we were part of the B Impact Clinic at the University of New Hampshire. And we got into a program there where they had a student team that helped us with our B Corp certification. process. And that was one of the most remarkable things to ever happen to us, to get to work with these students, specifically on our B Corp certification at no cost to our organization. And this was a real pivotal moment for our company, because there's no way in the world, as a startup, new business, without a lot of money, bootstrapping, and not a lot of time and bandwidth, the opportunity to work with this university on the project kind of set the tone and made us realize how critical and important it is to work with the younger generation as well, the Gen Z, which has been, for me, the most fulfilling part of this. So over the course of 3 years, we've now worked with 9 universities, and we've had 38 college students engaged in Orange Bike Brewing and our project. So we're currently in a project with Duke University, their Nicholas Institute for Energy, Environment, and Sustainability. They have a student team that's actually helping us to get over the finish line with our B Corp certification. And Dr. Jeremy Pear, who's a professor there, is also heading up the new innovation program at the University of New England. So he too has been helping us with that initiative. And then the Yale University right now, we're currently engaged in a 6-week intensive with Yale University, where they have 19 of their sustainability and water. Their water program is one of the top in the world for sustainability. And they've been working with us. We're in week 4 of this project. So they're addressing all different aspects of our business regarding sustainability. Specifically, water is kind of the primary, but there are some ancillary parts of the project that they're engaging in as well, which is really nice. The University of Maine, we've worked with several different programs over there. The most recently, the Black Bear Consulting Group, and it's paid for by the state. And we were able to get a team of students to help us with our website, social media strategy. So they did an intensive on us and then presented their findings, which we've been implementing. And then last, and probably the most significant group, and I believe Luke Truman's on this call as well, but Luke Truman is the director for the New England Environmental Finance Center. And Luke was with Allagash Brewing for close to 12 years, facility manager and also sustainability, helped with the programming there. And the New England Environmental Finance Center received a $350,000 grant specifically to work with craft beverage manufacturers in New England. So, and it's through the University of Southern Maine. So through Luke and his student team, he's really been an extension of Orange Bike Brewing between him and his students and all the work that they have done. Whatever sustainability project that we have or challenge or obstacle, we go directly to Luke and his team and just share, here's the challenge, here's what we're trying to accomplish. Can you all help? And Luke has raised his hand for every single challenge that we've had. So long story short, we have reached out for help specifically with academia. And that has been really rewarding to us. And we've let the academia and the students share their stories and their experience in working with our organization and the work that we're doing. And for us, that's been really helpful versus us sharing, and beating our own chest on what the work that we're doing. Sure, it's important, but there is a fine line. How much do you share? How much is authentic? But to have other folks share the story and why it's meaningful to them, that's what's been the most rewarding for me as a business owner. So I'll leave it at that for now.
Think of the perfect first date. You take a boat out to an island, beautiful day, have a nice dinner, go to a concert that's playing in the area, and then end up for a nightcap at your place, Tom. Carrie, I don't know what your role is here, but perhaps you set up the whole date. So that's,
hey, whatever you have for leftovers, bring them on over. It's all good.
Okay, sounds good. We're gonna start right into discussion and questions. I'll ask the first one. And Alex, you got to this a little bit, but why there's a lot of choices out there for consumers on where they go to drink, where they go to eat. Concerts a little bit more limiting depending on where they are in Maine, but what's in it for the consumer to go and work with a business that is focused more on sustainability than a lot of other companies might be. And Alex, you mentioned, the consumer just feels good for going green, but is there anything else that's in it for them?
That's a great question. There are plenty of restaurants that obviously compost. However, they're doing it with a third-party vendor. Our whole staff is brought into our composting program, and as far as we know, and from the research that we've done, we are one of the only restaurants in the country that is actually doing its own composting, which I think is fairly impressive, and we're doing it on an island. I think that a consumer can feel really good knowing that we are trying to get as close to zero waste as possible. It's not going to be possible to get to zero waste. I want to be realistic about that. But we're trying to get pretty darn close. And I think that our efforts are genuine, they are significant, and one of the only places where it is happening. So I think that our guests can feel good about it, especially in the future if they're able to take that home with them and do something productive with it.
Anyone else want to take on that question? What's in it for the consumer?
I'll speak to it a little bit. I don't think it, for the companies that we're talking to right now, it shouldn't be necessarily for the consumer. It has to be for yourself first, right? Hopefully they're with us, even small things. I will speak the composting side of things, Alex, it is an unbelievable battle. So the fact that you've been able to execute the way that you have and take that in-house is really admirable. So I commend you on that. It's a very expensive product. We talk, and process. We talked at the beginning of some of the failures. We were doing composting with a company up here, and the overhead on it was, it's astronomical sometimes, especially when you're dealing with 16,000 people at a concert and trying to go through that at the end. Not to mention just the process that you spoke to with what you have to do to get it to those parts. We have done everything just trying to make it so that it's an enjoyable experience. We've tried to find whether aluminum cups that our consumers could take home with them, souvenir cups a lot of people go with, but the amount of petroleum historically used for the souvenir cup was almost counterproductive. So we've tried to find that balance of being able to I guess reward the consumer in small ways where it leaves less of a dent, where our staff isn't picking up as much trash at the end of the night, because hopefully people are taking some things home that they're going to reuse. And again, there'll always be debate over which is worse, the process of making versus the process of the corn cups, but those are little things that we've done. So it's always been just what we've done first.
Good. We'll take our first question from the audience. We're hearing from Dental Lace, another company that could have easily fit into this group of experts this morning, but they say that they're working towards zero waste. And she wonders from the members of this panel, how do you encourage vendors to replace, plastic tape and other plastic packaging with sustainable packaging? How do you work with your vendors on packaging as well as anything else that you're focused on?
Yeah, Jeff, I sit on the board of a food service company, so I can speak to it from one angle here. Is consumer demand and market forces are absolutely the biggest driving force. People have to ask. There has to be options out there, but Much like we're talking about doing it for the consumer in your last question, the ability of hearing from the consumer and hearing from people that you're either doing business with or are doing business with you, the more that you can share what you're looking for and what's important to you, you're going to find that the competitive landscape will respond. It may take a bit, but certainly the traction of voices and the collection of requests and questions will find their way to the right people. In the company that I serve, there are plenty of plastic alternatives, and that has not come overnight, but it's come from restaurants, from service organizations, pizza places, schools, and organizations sharing their collective concern that this is important to them. And if you want to do business with people, these are important with you, you've got to respond. You've got to have those options out there and have it be readily available. So in short, I would say the answer is get as many people as possible to talk about it, and market forces will certainly respond.
And I echo that, Carrie. And it's, sourcing is part of the student teams that we've had helping us. We've had dedicated students specifically, that's all they focused on is our sourcing. Materials, packaging, grains, there's so many different facets of the business, but it took us 6 months of research to find our carriers. This was something that was really challenging, and it blew my mind that there weren't more alternatives to plastic. But the most common thing are the PakTechs for beer carriers, which, that's not even plastic you can recycle, residentially. They have to be collected. And there are breweries that have collection programs, which are awesome. But it took us 6 months to find this is a compostable, backyard compostable carrier. And this company, they're not local, e6pr.com, but it's 4 cents more per carrier versus the plastic. But, the experts had advised for a startup, we needed to do the financially responsible thing and go with the plastic because it was cheaper. But like, who are we and, what do we stand for? If there is an alternative and it's 4 cents more, is that really the right thing to do? And we found there was other ways to make up that 4 cents, but for us, it was a no-brainer. There was no way we were bringing more plastic into this facility. And we just received, one of our stakeholders just reached out. If any of you are not familiar with the company Tanbark, I highly recommend that you look up this company immediately. They're a Maine-based company. Melissa, the CEO, is doing remarkable things, and their model is very similar to the model that we're following at Orange Bike by tapping into our community and building like a community collective, all in it together, and a lot of open source sharing going on, which we're open source sharing everything. So if anyone has questions, feel free to reach out to, me direct or Jeff or Climate Work Maine to get in touch with me, and we'll share, what we've spent the last 3 years researching. But Tanbark actually has one of these products, hopefully that's going to be coming soon, but made here in Maine, which we're really stoked about. But yeah, to Carrie's point, you got to ask for it. The more people rumbling about it, there will be organizations like Tanbark that step up to the challenge. So people need to talk about it, but they are out there. You just have to find them, and it takes a little more time and energy, but they are out there.
Tom, thanks for mentioning Tanbark. I'll just mention here that Climate Work Maine is helping to host the next Portland Regional Chamber Eggs and Issues. That's the big breakfast networking event that happens in Portland. They attract 400 to 500 businesses, but we are moderating a panel with Alan Karen, the founder of Climate Work, with 3 area CEOs, one being Hannaford, one being Maine Beer Company, and the third being Tanbark. And we're going to hear more about their relationships and partnerships with other companies in the area, and more about the technology and the innovation that goes into their sustainable packaging. So thanks for bringing them up, Tom. And you know what? I've done so many webinars in the last few years. I don't think I've ever seen anybody get up, go over to something in another part of the facility, pull something out that's related to the conversation and describe it. So thanks Thanks for
Jeff,
that
Chris and I
little bit of
usually get up and go
difference.
get beer, but we turn our camera off before we do it.
I brought mine to my seat this time. I was smart.
Well, I didn't mention the beer specific part of it. I have seen beer cans in the background on a webinar, but
Mine's in a sustainable cup.
this is definitely cool. Unless anybody else has anything else to say on that.
I just want to share
topic.
just real quick, Jeff, we spent the last, or 3 of the last 4 years working with the University of Maine and the forest products industry as a whole and their 4 Maine initiative. And what Tanbark's doing is an extension of the technology. And one of the things that Tom shared earlier was the Composite Center of Maine. And the multi-syllable word that I'll show off here that I've learned a lot of is nanocellulose, and the ability of taking our trees and turning it into a sustainable product that's a fossil fuel replacement is going to have a lot of innovation coming out of the state, Tanbark being one of them. So good to see them mentioned here. It's an incredible company.
And one other quick note, Carrie, that's cool too. More and more products coming out with seaweed. And someone contacted us not too long ago about carriers being made with seaweed as well, compostable ones. But also someone approached us about a spent grain program to use our gluten-free spent grains to go into these compostable carriers as well, because we can't use, the barley and wheat ones in a dedicated gluten-free facility, but we're going to explore that as well.
One thing to add, I guess, with that too is, Carrie, one of the company that Carrie's working with is one of our providers, and they do an amazing job of making sure we find stuff that's as locally sourced as possible. We're also very fortunate to have so many local farmers and the like up here, brewers and such. So we oftentimes, especially for our when the artists show up, if we're doing a big spread for the artists backstage, there'll be many mornings of a day of show when a farmer will show up with a big box of fresh produce and things that aren't wrapped, which obviously goes a long way too.
Thanks. We talked a little bit about vendors and kind of getting them involved. A lot of companies fall into the green marketing trap without really committing to the cause, and you all seem to be very committed to the cause. What about your employees? I went to an event a few weeks ago that talked about sustainability in business, and they talked about incorporating green practices into the company culture. Have you been able to successfully do that with the people that you're working with, and how do you incorporate that culture into your stories?
I can jump.
Or go ahead, Carrie, please.
I think that was Tom.
Sorry.
Oh, that's all right, Chris. Just one thing for us that's really helped a lot, Jeff. We implemented this from the very beginning, a no BS rule. And, I know it may sound a little glib and funny, but it really, over 3 years, it's really set the tone for our organization and how we go about our business. And even with all the universities, especially with the students that have been involved, the very first meeting that we have, we always share, and it comes from me first, like, look, if you see BS in our organization, if you hear it come out of my mouth, if you hear it or see it in our written communications, call it. And we need to be able to address and validate why it's not BS. And if we can't, we pull it. Fortunately, we haven't pulled anything yet, but it's been really neat. And some of the most rewarding conversations that we've had have been around that. Like, I call BS, and it's just gotten us to engage in a whole new way of thinking. We don't have that people being scared to speak their mind. If they see something, they're not intimidated. Let's just talk. What a concept. Let's just talk with each other and share our concerns, wins, losses. So just being brutally honest, the good and bad, like Alex said, we're far from perfect. We've screwed up a lot, but we're trying. And, the recurring theme I heard a lot too in the opening remarks, small steps. When I first came out, we were swinging for the fences and we were trying to do everything. But if we did everything I wanted to, we would have been bankrupt within 3 months. So, just the small steps, it may not seem like much at first, but just the little small steps over 3 years and continuing go a long way. But just creating that culture, I think for us has been the most rewarding thing. Even B Labs, the B Labs corporate offices, they've been working with our project and they're doing a case study on our work. And that was actually one of the things that they resonated with the most. And they called specific attention to that there aren't enough of these conversations going on. So that was just one thing for me to share.
We talk about customers. Well, that's okay. I just want to say, we talk about customer results. We talk about our mission and our story and our goal of getting customers. And when we talk about employees, they're really just internal customers, right? So we talk about external customers a lot, but the employees are internal customers. And every business here and every business watching and participating has probably experienced workforce challenge in some regard over the last few years. I work with a company in Clinton called Fedco, and they do a lot of seeds and bushes for backyard farmers and sustainable practices. And when I walk through their warehouses and I walk through their shops, I'm just completely enamored by how much each of those employees live the mission of the company and not just show up for a paycheck. And if you're going to live a mission, then the people that join your company have to believe it and be a part of it as much as possible. And on the backside of that, the more you live that in how you advertise for job openings and how you recruit employees, the easier it is to get those folks that actually believe in what you believe. And I'm sure that the results there certainly become more satisfying, but the ability to get people to buy into the mission internally is just as important as the customers you're trying to convey to.
Yeah, I would say that they don't always come in with that same idea. When we started to introduce the initiatives at the beginning of our tenure, I was on the founding board for Bangor Green Drinks up here, and we had just started doing some really cool things with the way we were approaching businesses. And the one common theme when we started was that everybody we approached were really excited about showing what they were doing, whether it was changing the light bulbs to be more, friendly or whatever it might be. People were really excited to have that opportunity to showcase not only their business, but what they were doing to be more forward. We carried that into, the venue. And as we've continued on, people just come into the culture. So they may not come in with, you come into a concert trying to work in music. I mean, it's a pretty easy sell when we're recruiting a lot of times, right? But when people get in here and understand that we're trying to do more good on the other side of things, you're not long for any organization if you don't kind of understand and align with what they're trying to do. So I think it's with music and with trying to be green, it's pretty easy for us to find that commonality.
Great. Tom, you have a question that came in directly to you, and this can actually be expanded to the rest of you as well. How did the relationship between Orange Bike and UNH begin? And for others, how do you connect your companies with academia and students a little bit more in order to, expose them to potential jobs and potential careers?
Mm-hmm. So for the University of New Hampshire, early on, I started attending the B Corp meetings here in Maine. And there's a group of folks that are doing incredible stuff, B Corp related. And I had started to pursue B Corp certification. When I saw how intimidating it was, I hit the pause button, especially when I saw the list of like 350 or 80, I can't even remember how many questions that are part of the certification process, that I was just too intimidated. And then I met some folks at the Rue Institute who we've been working with because they have some co-op and internship programs. They told me about the UNH B Impact Clinic, and Dr. Fiona Wilson, who's a Mainer, oversees the B Impact Clinic, and she just, I think, got promoted again down at University of New Hampshire. But yeah, if you Google B Impact Clinic, University of New Hampshire, you'll find all the information there. But there's several organizations that you start hearing and seeing the same names and groups over and over. And again, that's part of the mission here at Climate Work Maine, is to be a resource for bringing all the amazing things happening in Maine under one umbrella and one roof, and kind of to be a hub for people to come to. Like, I need help with this, and then we'll help you to find the right and connect you with the right people. But yeah, Startup Maine with Katie Shorey, Live and Work Maine, the Maine Center of Entrepreneurs is a remarkable organization that I went through the Top Gun program, and we're very engaged with them. But yeah, just, through Googling, word of mouth, and then connecting with the right folks, especially here in Maine and the universities. If you type in co-op programs, internship opportunities, and follow along, you'll see they post quite a bit regarding applications. And that's how we got tied in, just kind of over time, connecting with the network.
Yeah, and you've started this thread a little bit, Tom. What's the best medium for telling your story? You talk, word of mouth, through consumers, through vendors, through other associations that are supporting. What about, do you all do a lot on social media? Does that make an impact in the message that you're trying to deliver? Carrie, you're on mute.
Some would say it's better that way. I was just sharing with Jody that, there's a lot of answers to that question, but to your point, social media is such a fantastic place at a low or no cost to expand your scale and share your story, and which platform really depends on your audience, right? And what you want to go about. But short form video, imagery, anything that tells in texture and additional context is fantastic. But the one thing that a lot of folks overlook is it doesn't always, and I think either Tom or Alex referred to this, it doesn't always have to come from you. So some of these concentric circles give you opportunity as well. So keeping your core fans, your core customers, the folks that shop with you, visit you, support you the most, keeping them in the loop as well of things that are happening so that they can act on your behalf and become raving fans, widens the circle of influence, gets you into different networks as well. So thinking about using them as communication transports, if you will, and making sure that you're not always just yelling to the public, having the ability of having other folks that already love you and support you and really want to root you on, have that inside information to share is highly effective as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Chris, I'll chime in, and I won't hog all the time here, but to that point, Carrie, what you were saying, for us early on, 2.5 years ago, I reached out to Anestis, Portland Food Map, Renee Cordes, Maine Biz, Tim Sebula from the Portland Press Herald, and shared with them and a few other media outlets the business, what we were trying to build, how we were going about it. I invited them to come along on this journey with us. And so over the course of 3 years, I've met with each of them, multiple times. They stop by every 2 to 3 months, and building those authentic relationships. I think Carrie or Chris had talked to this earlier too. Authenticity in relationships. That has been remarkable, because we're getting a lot of requests for media that we're not having to pay for, but it's just authentic. People are curious, they're getting to know us, getting to know the work that we're doing. But we've developed those relationships with the folks telling the stories that are very respected storytellers. I have great respect for each of them. That's why we specifically reached out to those reporters and writers early on. So just one other tidbit for what it's worth.
I'm going to jump in very quickly here and answer this in a backwards way. But one of the things that I've had to keep in mind as we continue to tell our story is that not everyone is as excited about composting as we are. And not everyone who comes out to Crown Jewel is coming out because they're going to this restaurant that self-composts. And, you know, Carrie, going back to being authentic, it's about trying to find a balance of reminding people of what you're doing and their effort you're making. But knowing that's also not the whole story, right? And that's not necessarily what's making someone's experience with you whole. So I just wanted to add that in.
That's a great point.
Well, we have about 3 minutes left, and it's always good for panelists to kind of think about the discussion and finishing things off with their closing thoughts. So let's do that in 30 seconds or less. Carrie, what's the most important thing that attendees should know about telling their stories?
Be ruthless at it. Be self-promoters. Be passionate about who you are and what you do with no apologies, and don't have two personalities. I think the biggest compliment that Alex could get at her restaurant is for someone to love the food and not even know that she does self-compost, right? And just adding those little touches just makes it extra special. But just be yourself and no apologies about it.
How about you, Chris?
Yeah, I echo that as well. And you know, just try not to fake it. I think that's the big thing, and don't sweat what you aren't able to achieve. Focus on the things that you can really hone in on and refine, and be proud of those things. I think the point about going to the restaurant and not even knowing is something to carry forward with everybody, because if you're doing it to be showy, you're not doing it for the right reasons, and it's not going to come across as anything other than inauthentic.
Thanks, Alex. Anything to add?
Sure. Yeah. I think, unfortunately, there's a lot to feel bad about these days. And the consistent thread here is, employing practices that make us feel good, no matter what industry you're working in. And I think inherently, the more you can employ practices that do feel good and sustainable, no matter what sustainable looks like to you, the more you're going to attract the consumers that you're looking for to your business.
Hey, Tom, send us home.
Yeah, for me, just full transparency. And kind of like we talked about with authenticity, we're publicly sharing where we screw up. And again, in my old corporate America, I never would have done that, because it's just not, you don't do that. Like lawyers and people like, no, don't do that. But we're doing this differently, and we're sharing. And what I found when we share all the stumbles that we've made, so many people jump in to help and support that we never would have expected. So we're actually able to fix where we screwed up by outside support, by sharing. So it kind of goes back to that authenticity. And, I said it before, the small steps. It's just been neat over 3 years. What didn't seem like much early on kind of bummed me out, because it didn't seem like we were moving the needle, systemically, not just sustainability, but with our racial justice initiatives and some of the other things. And to see over the course of 3 years, the impact and reflection, wow, all those little steps and showing up week in and week out over the course of time really have made a difference. So I'll leave it with that.
Thank you all for sharing your stories today. And I encourage everybody on this webinar to go check out these companies, check out the businesses, and let us know what you think. So that's it for today. Thank you all. Have a good afternoon.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Jeff.